Well, hey there. Have you ever had a conversation with a person and you're really trying to get the point across, but for whatever reason you can see by the glassiness in their eyes, they're not paying attention to a word that you're saying? Why does that happen, and what can we do about that? Let's jump into that with a new episode of ThoughtRaid. Hello everybody, and welcome to ThoughtRaid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and this is Tim.
Yep.
And today we're talking about those weird moments in conversation where you can tell the other person is not listening, and what we can do about that, because that can be frustrating, and there's a lot of different intricacies that make that happen. So let's talk about that. This is your week particularly. This is something that's been on your mind, Tim. So hit me up. What's been on your mind related to this whole topic?
Well, in our profession, we talk to a lot of people.
Yes.
And if you're in consulting, if you are a counselor, if you are a pastor, basically if you're in a position where you're trying to help somebody in some way or form.
Saying hello to Thing.
What's up, Camden? Listening is a very important tool.
Yes.
And it gets really difficult when we know, well, I don't want to say when we think that we have something of value to tell somebody or to offer somebody that, oh, well, I should just be listening for my turn to speak. So I want to talk about communication today. Why are people not listening when you speak? So are you one of those people where you talk, and you're like, man, why are people just not listening? Why does it seem like when I talk, everybody tunes out? Yet when this person over here talks, everybody's like waiting with bated breath,
Yes.
Have you ever had moments like that?
Yes.
Do you think that? Because I think that frequently. I remember when our young adults group started, before I led it, I was always like, man, I have great things to say. I want to, man, if people only knew what was in here, I'm just waiting for my opportunity to chime in, and plus being single in a group of people, you want to be known. You want to put yourself out there. You want people to know, hey, I'm awesome. Especially if you're a Christian, I'm doing things for the Lord, brother, but it's really strange because when I was younger, going through Amway and early management and stuff like that, I always thought that it was all my ability to convince somebody to speak well, speak eloquently, to come across as a certain way, or to present an idea effectively. So I realized that a lot of the time I was just looking for a springboard. Whenever I'm talking to people or whenever I look at group dynamics, there's always one or two people that are just looking for an opportunity to talk. And they're not looking for an opportunity to listen, and they're not evaluating whether people actually care.
Yeah.
If it's relevant, if they're being long-winded. There are some of our friends where we joke, long story short, with them because all of their stories are super long. And Alex, if you're watching, I love you. But I can say that because we joke about it openly, and he's aware of that, and he's made a lot of progress with it. But myself included, I think frequently I find myself looking for springboards to speak in a conversation. What about you?
Well, it depends. Talking and opening my mouth before a group of people can be a bit daunting. So I end up more being comfortable observing before I say anything. But like if I'm around a bunch of people that I do know, I think in those situations I'm more likely looking for opportunities to speak, but not actively. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm listening, it's more so, am I hearing anything that I can specifically speak to? And if I don't, then I'm not going to speak because I only want to speak to what I know, not to not to just anything that comes my way. Swallowed incorrectly.
Well, I'm thinking back to an early thought raid many moons ago where we were talking about, I think it was Dan's bachelor party.
Maybe.
Or different interactions that I've had with Dan. And
it's been a year.
It's been.
We've been around for a year.
Yeah. Well, in those situations, that whole group of friends is very witty. They have quick wit. Just boom, 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 little jokes back and forth. And being superficial is not my forte. If you know me, being superficial is not my forte. And I always look at people who are witty and have a lot to contribute and that can keep rolling I regard them with a lot of esteem because I've always wanted that, And that thought raid forever ago, we talked about how I felt out of place and I felt like I wasn't good enough and felt like I couldn't connect because I couldn't offer what they offered.
Yes,
and
that I remember.
Yeah, and every time I'd be in those conversations, I would find myself just listening for a springboard to contribute. And I never found one because it was all conversation that I wasn't used to or good at. And I felt bad about it. I was like, well, I guess I can't be friends with these people to some degree because, well, my personality is a lot different than their personality. And I felt really bad about that for a while. We had several conversations about that. But there are many reasons why we look for a springboard in a conversation. A lot of them are selfish. Why do you think that is?
Selfish reasons or just reasons in general why people want to springboard into a conversation?
Yeah, why do you think people... They evaluate the conversation just listening for their cue to, I have this to offer.
I mean, it depends. The reasons why, if I'm ever going to be listening to jump into a conversation, it is to be helpful. So like I said, if I'm listening, I'm listening like I'm learning the whole time. I'm constantly like, what can I learn from this conversation that we're having about the person, about myself, about life, whatever. But then I'm also listening. I'm listening for the express purpose to be able to help someone. So like if I recognize as I'm listening that they're saying something that doesn't sound healthy, then that's the reason why I'm listening. In some cases, I'm always listening to help. But I think other reasons why people kind of are waiting for the springboard, maybe it could be a matter of they feel like they have to. Because if you were to, say, be more of a quiet person and grew up in a very loud and boisterous family, you could feel like you have to be equivalently boisterous as your family was. I feel like some people might put themselves in unnecessary stress to speak up when they don't really have to because that's what they were raised in. Or like if you're like me and you were constantly surrounded by theater kids for parts of your life and they always seem to outshine you, maybe there could be a feeling of like I have to like do something to get an edge in here when I'm back in those situations. But it just depends. Those are just some ideas that come to mind.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm not really sure, man. I'm just thinking about how people tend to interrupt. That's the weird... Okay, so last year when COVID hit, everything went to Zoom and everything went online, And it was a lot more difficult to acknowledge social cues. We even saw this in Thought Raid. It was really difficult to acknowledge social cues when the other person wanted to speak without... private messaging the person, hey, Brandon, shut up so I can talk. Tim, shut up so I can talk.
We never really had to do that, though.
We didn't, but, it was a lot more difficult than being in person because I can kick you under the table or you can, nudge me. It's like, Tim, shut up. But all that aside, you can just pick up when somebody's trying to say something. But thinking about how, I don't want to say a lot of, people can tend to interrupt one another almost incessantly. Like they keep interrupting.
Yeah.
We went to dinner with we met somebody at dinner the other night, and we were just talking with them, and the person kept interrupting Ariane as she was trying to contribute to the conversation, and then I would try and contribute, and they would interrupt me as well, and I'm thinking about the person, and they have a hard time at home. There's a lot of them giving, and they don't. It just hurts my heart because their situation is really difficult, and I know they don't feel heard, and so in that moment, I'm pretty sure the person was thinking, "Wow, people actually want to listen. Let me talk," and it was probably a lot more difficult for that person to be receptive to. Oh, wait, they're trying to speak now. But why or what am I trying to contribute to the conversation?
I know you have that specific question, but I'm thinking there's various reasons why people interrupt other people Like I've been guilty of interrupting people in conversation, and that's mainly because I get a thought and I don't want to forget that thought. So like I try to interject it before I forget the thought because it feels really pertinent in the moment, and I want to make sure that you hear it before I forget it, and then I may never be able to bring it up again, because again, with my continuous goal to help people, you know, I recognize, ooh, this could really help them. And then if we continue going on too long, I might forget what it was. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope they didn't need what I was thinking of in the moment, because now it's gone. It's just...
Well, Brendan, you know, so here's why we're talking about this today. I feel the same way. You know, our proficiency, our propensity for being deep in conversation is pretty high. You know, between you and me, abnormally high. I guess that's why we can do thought rates so fluidly and always have deep subjects to talk about. And it exhausts a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know? And when we engage people, do I want to say that because it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn? When I engage people, I tend to want to go there because I know that that's just a big focus of mine. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if those people are always ready for that, you know? And it has me not listening to them. Mm. I keep giving them what I think they need in that moment. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is, Brandon, you know, and for you guys too, when you're talking to people, unless it's like a whole group setting, and even then, like in group settings, I'm really quiet normally because there's so much going on. I feel like people have so much to say, and honestly, I feel pretty fulfilled in my level of being heard. Mm-hmm. You know, and I like observing people, but in a one-on-one conversation, I have found myself, am I just listening for a springboard, and what am I trying to contribute? Thinking, well, I got so much stuff to give this person, I need to give it to them. But it's weird, like, I tend to give them a lot of stuff that they don't actually need because I think they need it before I've actually listened to them. Mm-hmm. You know? I mean, do you find yourself doing that too?
I mean, I definitely have had people that have confronted me and say that I keep talking and need to stop talking, that it's like they got the point like 5 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely had the issues where people are like, you're talking too much, and I've already got it, and now I kind of feel like I'm being steamrolled over. So I've had that issue of like, but when it comes to oversharing, but when it comes to specifically like bullet point specific pieces of information, not necessarily as much. Because at least when it comes to the list of priorities that I have when I'm engaging a person, I would say that the first priority is the relationship itself. And then after the relationship comes what I think they might need, anything that I could do to help them. Because if I want to just help them, but I'm not so conscientious about the relationship that we're trying to establish, anything that I give them is not going to help.
And that's why I overheard this conversation where these people were talking about preaching the gospel and how we're going to this place and our whole agenda is preaching the gospel. And they would go up to somebody and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, do you know Jesus, whatever. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, I mean, I guess that's kind of cool because we're supposed to preach the gospel. But, you know, like the questions in chat, why or what am I trying to contribute? Are they or is that person receptive to my message? And am I forcing the conversation around my agenda? If you're actually communicating with somebody, it's like give and take. You're kind of feeling where they're at and, you know, respecting where they're at, because 1 Corinthians 13 says we're not supposed to insist on our own way. And if they don't want to go there in the conversation and we push it there, it's like, that's me. Like, I've done that with so many possible would-be friendships in my life. There's one person in particular that I went out to lunch with and I was like, hey man, why does our friendship not work? And they commented to me, well, honestly, it's because you make me uncomfortable with how deep you always are, and you don't really feel that out with people. You just always go there. And I was like, ooh. Because I thought that was a strength of mine, and it is to a degree a strength of mine. But at the same time, if I make somebody uncomfortable and they're not receptive to my message, and that's the message I keep giving them, and I'm not listening to them, because I'm sure the person gave me many cues, whether they were verbal or, you know, physical, nonverbal communication. Hey, I don't want to go there. And maybe it was a little prideful for me to think, oh, well, I just need to keep pushing because this is healthy for you to be here. I mean, I guess in some situations that's true, but, are they receptive to my message? In all the groups I've been a part of, there's always, as I mentioned, those people that talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And they're not really feeling the room. They're not acknowledging, okay, do these people actually want to hear this right now? Are they receptive to my message? I don't know, man. Like, there's one side of things where it's like, okay, I'm sure what I have to say does have value and somebody will pick it up. But how do you navigate that? How do you figure out when to speak and when not to speak?
That's a great question. That's something I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest, because up until a couple of years ago, like, I felt like I was the primary one responsible to fill the air with conversation, and that if it fell flat, it was my fault. And now I'm kind of beginning to realize that obviously that's not all on my shoulders. So, I mean, that's something I'm still kind of figuring out what the balance is and things of that nature.
Yeah, I was reading this book. I think it was called Bringing Out the Best in People forever ago. What did Seth say real quick?
He's saying the squeaky wheel wants the grease, but who wants to hear a wheel constantly squeaking?
So much wisdom.
I know.
Bringing out the best in people. There was this president. Maybe it was a president. It was some person who was well known, had a lot of influence. Went out with this woman, and she said, by the end of the evening, I knew that he was a great man. And then there was this other person that took her out, and he would ask her open-ended questions, just like draw her out. And that's a term I'm still like trying to figure out what it means to draw somebody out. And she said, while with the first guy, at the end of the date, I realized that he was a great man. With the second guy, at the end of the date, I realized I was a great woman. I'm like, that's a much different situation. Like, would I rather be the person that at the end of the conversation somebody thinks I'm great, or at the end of the conversation would I want the other person that I was in conversation with thinking that they're valuable and great?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd want the other person to feel valuable. Like I'm at a place right now where God has blessed me with so many people that have poured into my life, and my social outlets are relatively full, that I'm kind of content to hide. Ironically, even though we're having thought raid, and I'm exposing the wisdom that God has given me, to the average person who doesn't know who I am, I'm very content portraying myself as a fool.
Fool.
That was really good. Can I just say, if you like anime, what is it called? Not death. What is it called?
Fools.
No. But it's, what is it? I'm thinking of Full Metal Alchemist, but that's not it at all.
No, it was the sword.
Yeah. Well, it was. Yes.
Seth, you should know this. What anime was that? It was Excalibur, and he was very aggravating or annoying. He wouldn't stop talking.
He wouldn't. Yes, but he was very smart too. Like, he knew what he was talking about. But
Soul Eater.
Soul Eater, yes. Oh, so good. I can go on a tangent with that about someone who spoke a word over me and said that I had a sword and it was Excalibur. And of course, I didn't think about the Excalibur that everyone knows about. I only thought about that annoying sword.
You fool! Blah, 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 blah. Welcome to Thought Raid, where it's Brandon and Tim speaks sometimes.
Tim speaks... No, Tim, no.
I'm just kidding. It's more like 70-30.
Wow. Anyways, part of that feels like I have to draw things out. But anyways, I like to come across as an idiot to people nowadays more if I can, because it's like, there's a whole scripture verse that talks about that God likes to hide wisdom. Like it does in great pleasure to hide wisdom, not to make it just blatantly obvious for everyone. Even though, again, it's an oxymoron. Like, you can literally go to Proverbs and you can read all of, the wisdom you could want to ingest, one a day, really. But at the same time, unless, you know where to look, it's not like God's just like, wisdom is attacking you. Like, no, you have to go find it. So, I don't know. It's just...
Well, I love that, too. One of my best conversations ever was a time where I was just talking to this person. I just wanted to, here's how much Jesus loves you, you know? But I didn't do that. I just asked them questions. And at the end, they were like, my life sucks and yours just seems so much happier. What's different about your life? And that was an invitation to speak. You know, I love it when I get to the point where I've asked so many questions and done the homework. Because what I just put in chat is learning to love through listening. And guys, I don't have this all figured out. I feel like I'm still a noob when it comes to loving somebody through listening well, because I still am trying to figure out, like, I have all this information I want to give, just take it. But people aren't ready for it.
No.
You know? You got to do your homework with people. And you got to walk. It's kind of like why Jesus doesn't pull us out of our situations. You know, he wants to love us through our situations. And if God doesn't look at our circumstances, but instead looks at our value, we should do that too. We shouldn't feel like we have to give people something because we think that's what they need. You know, we shouldn't feel like we have a savior mentality to fix people or turn their lives around. That's their responsibility. You know, our job is to...
That's God's responsibility to save them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But our job is loving somebody well is just acknowledging, hey, you're worth listening to. You're worth asking these questions to. And if you want correction, if you want guidance, if you want instruction, I believe that you'll ask me, because, you know, God is so much better at leading people than we are.
Yeah.
You know, listen for invitations to provide feedback. Man, it is so awesome when I've talked to somebody who has glaring issues, right? And I don't go into those conversations as often as I used to. I still do, but as often as I used to. I don't go into them thinking, okay, you need to change this. That's one of the Southern Christian, well, probably the Westernized Christian narratives. Like, you need to convict people of their sin. You need to tell them what they're doing wrong. You need to tell them that they need to change this stuff.
Or hell, stone, and brimfire, I don't know.
Brimstone and hellfire?
There you go. That sounds right.
But yeah, it's not about that. It's about saying, hey, you're worthless. You're worth conversation. You're worth... And then when they realize, oh, well, this person's actually listening to me, well, maybe they can provide some insight because they don't seem like they have this issue. Well, What's your opinion on this? And that's the invitation to speak that I'm talking about. Like, one of my favorite things is when I get to a point with people and I feel comfortable enough to ask them for their guidance. You know, one of the things I hate is when people come into my life thinking, well, you deal with pride, you deal with this, you need to change this. It's like, brother, boundaries over there, you crossed it. You know, chill. You know? But when somebody's like, oh, hey, how are you? What's going on in your life? What are you doing? Okay, so what matters? How are you feeling right now? Just ask me all the homework questions, not to just like get them out of the way so they can use it as a springboard to speak, but... You know, I like giving people long enough to end the conversation without using their springboard. It's like, oh, I can trust them now. It's like I've given them many opportunities to jump into talking about themselves or whatever, but they didn't do it because they were focused on me. And that feels really good, you know? Oh, thanks, Kristen.
Oh, it is a nice
This
shirt.
is essentially how I want my entire body to look when I'm tattooed. But yeah, get through conversations with people where they don't take the opportunity to speak about themselves, and it's like, oh, well, wait. I actually want you to say this. Like, what's your thought on this? What's your opinion?
Real quick, speaking about learning to love through listening and stuff, Kristen, I just want to say thank you for supporting ThoughtRaid and being with this whole time. Like, you heard that what we were going through, and you've been supporting us this whole way through, and we are very, very grateful for you. And Seth, as you've been listening to us today, thank you for just joining us again today and just talking as you are. We're very grateful for all of our listeners who are involved, and we definitely want to encourage you guys, if you happen to have anything that you want us to speak about, that's on your heart, that's been bothering you, that you're going through, or something that we can kind of help with through ThoughtRaid, just let us know. Just send us a message here on Facebook, or send us a message through thoughtraid@gmail.com. But we would love to be able to help and cover whatever kind of topics that matter most to you. So let us know. Even if we've gone through it, if we have enough people that are wanting to learn more about it, we'll gladly go through it again in and add on any kind of new things that we're currently learning. And Deathbane, I'm also very grateful for all of your time that you spent with us, listening to us, being with us consistently this whole time. It is awesome. thoughtraid exists because of you guys, and you have given us something to look forward to every day, that we can help somebody with whatever they're going through. So I just want to say thank you to all of you guys who have been listening to us this whole time. I'm very grateful.
Oh, yeah. And since we're talking about this, and we'll finish up here in a second, if you guys haven't already done so, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscribe button, because our goal is to get to 100 subscribers. It'd be great if you guys would support us so more people can see what we do.
And we can shorten our URL on YouTube from thoughtraid. Or YouTube. To youtube.com/thoughtraid.
Yes.
We want to get rid of the demon text out of our URL.
Casting out the demons.
Anyways, please continue.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I've got one more comment. The self-awareness. Is this for me or for them? So going back to the title of this stream, why are people not listening to you speak? I think one of the most sobering questions you could ask is what I'm saying more for me or for them? Because it's really easy for us to rationalize, oh, well, this is for them because they need to hear it. Or this is for them because it's relevant to the conversation. And because, man, I can't tell you how many times I do this where I feel like I have an in the conversation because I'm listening to the insecurity that I'm not enough or that I need to participate. Oh, man, that sucks. When I have an insecurity that says, Tim, you need to participate in this conversation because it's like, why? Why can't I just be okay just listening? I don't really have anything of that. It's the whole concept of throwing your pearls before the swine. Not saying that people are swine.
I was going to say real quick, the way you said that, you do have things of value. It's just meekness. Like the understated word of the century is meekness. It's power under restraint. Like people who understand the strength that God has given them and the wisdom that God has given them do not speak the most because they understand their value. And so when they do speak, it is because they see an opportunity to impart said wisdom in a place where it will be received well. And you can tell that they're listening into the situation because they're not insecure about what they have and if it's valuable. They know they're just secure in the Lord. So I feel like, I think it's one of those deals. It's like, when you're jumping into a conversation, I don't think the goal of the conversation should be what can I impart to them per se, to express my value or to put my part into the conversation, but rather how can I properly love them, which first and foremost leads straight to listening and asking them questions and just hearing their responses in a way that it changes what you're going to say. If what they're saying does not change your thinking, does not change what's going to come out of your mouth next, are you really listening? Because it should. You should have to put pins into certain things that you want to say because the conversation has moved in a direction that no longer fits that in the moment.
Man, the older I get, the more I put that into practice, where like you were talking about earlier, there's so many things I want to say, and it's like, oh, if I don't say these, I'll forget them. So what if I forget them? It's not like people's lives are made or broken, make or break, made or broken through me contributing to the conversation. That's all for me. I think when there is a break in conversation and the person acknowledges, oh, well, Tim, I want to hear your perspective on this, whatever I say is going to be relevant.
Yeah.
And I need to understand that if there is not a break in conversation, the person is either doing what I'm doing, where just accepting any springboard to speak, or they just don't care about what I have to say. And even if, especially if that's the case, if they don't care about what I have to say, if I take those small springboards and butt in, it's like it's going to fall on deaf ears anyways, because they're just going to be listening for their springboard as well. And so it's like I would hazard to say that in a lot of my conversations now, 90% of the things that I want to say, I'm like, and I think I'm okay with that. I'm getting more okay with that. And that's also hard sometimes too, because I'm sitting there trying to reconcile, am I just being lazy? And do I need to be more intentional with this conversation? Am I not being obedient? Like, am I not saying difficult things because I want to avoid conflict? There's a lot of negative things to consider when it comes to that.
But I feel like having that is what Dan was talking about in the very beginning of trying to critique yourself in the creative process. Like, it's just not going to work if you're constantly thinking about all of those things. Like, I know it's nearly impossible not to think about some of those things, but like in general, like having this constant looping through my head, am I giving in enough, giving enough into the conversation or something of that nature, that's putting more of the focus on you and less the focus on the other person sitting across from you that you're trying to communicate with.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah. So guys, why are people not listening when you speak? Well, it's probably because you're not focused on them.
It probably is related to the fact that there's just insecurities that are on the inside of you that are preventing you from being at peace in the conversation. Like, I think the reason why I kept talking and talking and talking is because, again, I felt like everything rested on my shoulders and that the other person was not responsible, and that and not to say that they didn't have responsibility to talk, but that I just hadn't thought of the right things to say to pull it out of them per se. But there are plenty of people that I have encountered since that point that I can't get to stop talking. And I can just sit there and say nothing the whole time. And it's very refreshing being on the other side of it, to be honest. But, yeah, like a lot of the times where I wasn't listening to what the other person was saying and I was missing important details is because I was so focused on not being awkward or whatever that I was just... my focus
swing and a miss.
Yeah, it's just focused in the wrong areas. I'm more concerned, and even now as I'm sitting here, I'm still like mulling over any times where that was the case and how will I be the next time. But I recognize that it's not really necessarily fruitful thinking. It's just living in the what ifs, and there's no reason to live in the what ifs.
Yeah,
that's a whole quote that God kind of downloaded on the inside of me, and then I created and put onto thoughtraid. It's like you don't live from the what if, we live from the what is.
Yeah,
what is presently in front of you, and go from there. Because the Bible talks about us to be like children. That you cannot inherit the kingdom unless you become like one of these. And Jesus was pointing to, and I think he had a child right in front of him at the time when he was saying that, and so he was referring like, unless you become like a child, you're not going to be able to inherit the kingdom of God. Well, one of the characteristics of a child is that the child just is. They're not really thinking so intently about how would this be perceived and how might this affect me. It was on their mind, and there you go. If they're bored, they'll tell you. It's just... I think that's a place where we ironically need to get back to. Not to say that we don't be conscientious about blessing people and being generous with what we say, gentle and kind, but not also sitting there and thinking for 5 hours straight about what we're going to say before we even say something, and like overwhelming yourself by all the what ifs. If I say this thing, will they reject me? Will they whatever? Like... I don't know.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to start a new segment called Afterthought.
Yes.
In an endeavor to make our streams more succinct, our goal is to keep these at 30 minutes. So if you like that idea, give this a thumbs up or let us know in the comments.
Yes.
We're going to take nuggets that you guys bring to us, whatever, things that are still lingering after 30 minutes, and we're going to present them to you in a 5-minute-ish fashion called an afterthought.
Afterthought.
Yeah, so if you haven't done so, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, and you should see anywhere from 2 to 6 of those published per week if you want a bite-sized tidbit of what we thought after the fact.
Yes.
Our afterthoughts.
Yes. It'll be a little bit longer than our TikTok videos, which we do have 1-minute TikTok videos that we post every Monday, roughly. Sometimes it's a Tuesday, depending. But usually every Monday. But these will be just a little bit longer so we can have a little bit extra time to go into the topic and bring you some good stuff that comes to mind after thoughtraid. Afterthought. Anyways. So yes, we'd love to have you there for that. So... with that said, I want to thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week, Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. We'll be live tomorrow at 6, I want to say, or was it 5? So
Sometime tomorrow.
Yep.
Bye, guys.
Far away from where I've been, he says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.